What's going on, guys? Welcome to the first episode of CrashCast with Mike Levine. My name is John Kroom, and that is obviously Mike Levine. And we're just starting a podcast because one, I like podcasts, and then two, I work for Mike, and then three, Mike is wanting to give some information out into the world. So that's why we're here. And so you probably don't know either one of us. Well, actually, if you're listening to this, you probably know both of us, and that's probably why you're listening. But I just wanted to kind of do our first episode and kind of hear a bit about Mike's background and kind of get that rolling. So like, Mike, where does Levine Law Group come from? Why Levine Law Group, and why law? Let's hear a little bit back of your story. Let's dive back into the day.
All right. Well, why law? Why law is really kind of strange. When I went to college, I honestly believed that there were like two professions. Okay, you could either be a lawyer or a doctor. I mean, and that's just a sad. That's a sad case of misunderstanding and I don't know, it speaks volumes about guidance counselors, right? Because, nobody actually told me there was something else I could do,
Well,
a biologist, a chemist, or many, many things, go into finance or whatnot. So I only thought there were two things you could do. And I was like, I'm not really good with blood. I mean, I've become better with blood as I grew older and started racing bicycles. That made me get used to it. And had kids, so you got to act a little different around when they come up to you bleeding. But I mean that was the skinny of it. That's just all I thought I could be. So I mean, I went from I was in the military. I got out. I knew I wanted to go to college, and I went to Chapel Hill, and that's the only thing I thought I could do. So I took courses that kind of geared me in that direction, and went to law school afterward. And when I got out of law school, I started working for a firm, after I passed the bar in Wilmington. And it was honestly a personal injury firm. And in law school, we made fun of personal injury firms. I mean, we made fun of a guy down there, and I can't remember. I went to law school in Mississippi College School of Law. And the guy down there used to run an ad on New Year's about calling him, and he would pay for your taxi cabs and stuff. And he was a big personal injury person. And we always thought it was funny and how ridiculous. And we were going to be constitutional law professors, and we were going to be criminal lawyers. And, that's not the job I got. And luckily for me, because, once I got the job, in personal injury, I just realized that, it was, right now I wouldn't have any other job. I mean, if you asked me, say, would you go and do work, in this criminal firm, or would you go work for this corporate firm? I would never do that. I mean, because, in personal injury, you get to hear people's stories. Most of them are sad, but you get to help them fight a much greater enemy than you realize in the insurance industry. And, and it gives you kind of personal satisfaction. So I started a firm with a partner of mine here in Mooresville, because that's where he was from. I grew up in Roanoke, Virginia, and went to high school in Wilmington, North Carolina. But actually where Michael Jordan went to high school, E.A. Laney, not when he was there. He's older than I am. And I did play basketball with his brother on the basketball courts, though, at UNC Wilmington when I was growing up. But anyway,
kicking that too.
No, man, I'm I'm a good basketball player. I mean, I don't want to. I don't want to start flexing on here, but I mean, I was pretty decent. But anyway, then things change as time goes by, and I decided I wanted to, I don't know. My partner and I didn't see all that eye to eye, and I, went out. We basically split up, and he went his way, and I went my way, and that's where Levine Law Group came from, and that was about 5 years ago. Actually, I was looking at my lease the other day, and it's running out, and I moved a year after after we split up. So it's been about 5 years with Levine Law Group. So, and that's where I am today. We specialize, of course, in like obviously car wrecks and truck wrecks and medical malpractice and workers' compensation. And when you're in this industry and you see, like, I'll give you an idea. I mean, people are saying we know we have a problem with equality and justice. Well,
Yeah.
if you've been in this industry for 25 years, you've been looking at it for a long time. I mean, don't get me wrong. When I was in law school, I had a real good understanding because I went to Mississippi College School of Law,
Yeah.
and I had a little externship at the public defender's office. I had a great public defender there. His name was Tom Fortner. And I mean, this guy was crazy. And he was a really small guy. And I'm not a small guy. I mean, I'm 6 foot and, a couple 100 pounds. And you would come into his office and he would say, "We got to go to court. Give me your jacket." So you would give him your jacket and tie, and this dude would go into court. But he was brilliant. I mean, even though he looked like he was wearing his father's clothes. But we'd go into court, man, on Monday mornings to the proximate cause hearings. And, there was nothing but, black and brown men in orange jumpsuits that they had arrested that weekend. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I mean, I think it might have been my first realization. And I don't think it was because it's not because I grew up wealthy. I grew up very poor. It was my first realization of injustice because it was the first time I could catch a breath and actually look at it. Yeah. I mean, and that's because I was poor. And so my whole life was survivorship. Like, we need some food. We need to get this. I need this. If I want to play a sport, I need to work this job and get this equipment. I mean, everything was geared towards a goal, and there wasn't any break in that to actually look around and see the world. So walking into that courtroom on Monday morning the first time and seeing that, I'm thinking to myself, what the hell? Did nobody white commit a crime in Jackson, Mississippi this weekend? Yeah. I mean, where are the white people?
No, so how
didn't make any sense,
How old were you at that time?
Well, I was probably 24, 25, because I had gone in the Navy after high school, which is insane because I graduated 12th in my class in high school. I mean, this is really how bad that guidance counseling was. I mean, I graduated 12th in like 460 some people at EA Laney, and I went in the military because they didn't help me get any scholarships. They didn't tell me how to apply for college. I mean, it was because I was poor. That's just funny. The economic inequities of it.
It's funny that you mentioned like that's the first time that you realized, that there's this sense of privilege or this sense of like this feeling of like, hey, something's not right here. Like the odds don't, like, being that, African American, that's a minority. So for the fact that in Mississippi, which I'm assuming there's not a ton of black people in Mississippi, like, and so the fact
there's a lot of I think Mississippi might be disproportionately black. You don't understand that. Yeah.
So like, and that's like, but like you walk into the courtroom and it's like just the only people that got arrested this weekend just happened to be black. What are the odds in that? Well, because it's funny that you mentioned, it's like you're 25, I'm 26. And so I recently, like just back in March when this whole quarantine thing started, and then, with all this recent Black Lives Matter movements, I always was like, oh, I'm not racist. Like I support Black Lives Matter. I support people of color, like blah, 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 blah. And I start going on a trip, and I remember getting frustrated that I was like, oh, this interstate's closed because they're doing a protest. Well, geez, what the hell? And then I like took a second and I like stepped back and I was like, there's my privilege. That was it. That's what everybody's talking about. And I never really realized it until I had a moment to step out of myself and go, well, what are they why are you getting upset that they're standing in the middle of the highway protesting how pissed they are for how they're being treated? Because
your delay.
Yeah, your 20-minute
delay is them getting killed, and you're like, what the fuck, man? Yeah. That's bizarro,
Well, that's when it hit me. I was like, yep, white privilege at its finest. And then it hit me because then the snowball effect comes into play, right? So then it starts to hit you with the sense of, well, now, not only am I white, because my wife has that white privilege then too, right? Well, then you start to realize like her getting treated as a female, and you start to see how that's happening and how she communicates with people, and you're like, well, why don't you say this? And she'll just be like, well, John, that would get me fired. Or it'd be like, hey, honey, calm down. Is it your time of month? Like, it get real stressed out, right? Like, yeah, no, like that things happen, and you're like, what the hell, that people say that to you? And
you better work on that male privilege thing, man.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. And so then you realize that not only are you privileged and white, but you're a male on top of it all. You could go back in time in any generation and be okay. You see what I'm saying? And it was like this big, if this quarantine did anything for me, it was like this big epiphany of privilege all around, and especially for somebody like me.
You didn't learn any of that from me? No.
Well, dude, and that's the funny thing. And that's the funny thing. It's like, I didn't learn any of that from you. And it took me getting hit by a car to really figure out what you did. And I worked for you for like 5 months, So by a car first.
Yes. So, backing up, I'll tell you, that was my first acknowledgement that something was wrong, but I didn't use it. Yeah. I mean, I was still, look, it took me till I was probably 45 years old, and have to suffer some, interpersonal dilemmas in my family to actually broaden up my sense of being and actually look in and have some personal reflection and realize that. And also, I won't lie. I mean, I hate Facebook in the disputes that I readily engage in with people who I consider morons and whatnot. But I will tell you this: sometimes I see in these young men, these, who are in their 20s and starting their families, I see myself. And because they believe that they just did this on their own, that they pulled their bootstraps up and did the hard work, and then nobody gave them a thing. And I see myself, because I really believe that, I mean, I really thought that, I guess it took a while to realize you got to have some bootstraps to pull yourself up by them, right? I mean, if you're walking around in bare damn feet, how are you going to use bootstraps to pull yourself up? And that's what a lot of people are doing. I mean, that's a simple analogy of it. But I just had to look back and say, wait a minute, I've been really lucky. I was lucky that my mother was smart and that she had capacity to reason. She died young, but I was lucky that my grandparents passed on, really good genes, and she was smart. It gave me this capacity. So first of all, I was lucky that they went through that they were passed on, the privilege they were passed on with regard to education and capacity. And I got that, and a lot of people don't get that. So I had some capacity that other people don't have. And then if I start looking back on my life, because at one time I had to tell my life story, all the times when shit could have gone damn south. I mean, don't get me wrong, it ain't been an easy life. Some shit's gone south, but it wouldn't have been the same life if I was a black man, or an Indian or a woman, I mean, I got some breaks, I mean, I got in trouble with a group of guys when I was in high school for shoplifting, right? I mean, we got arrested. I mean, I wasn't shoplifting. I was with them, I'll give you that much. I had a little bit more morals than that. Now, I ain't stole anything in my life. My brother and I were talking about all this shit we stole from 7-Eleven as children. I mean, what's talking about robbed the 7? It's like I must have robbed that 7-Eleven blind and bubble yum and root beer or whatever. But yeah, I mean, when we got arrested and we went to court and the judge was like, you guys are all white and going, some kid told a story about him going to college and he's let us all off. I mean, see ya. I was like, awesome. I didn't even need a lawyer. I was just, hey, they let me out the next morning, I mean, or probably that night. I mean, it was crazy, the things, I mean, that would have never happened when I was in, I just, people who think they did it all by themselves just aren't really looking back and realizing how many times somebody took a chance on them, how many times they got a break, that somebody else might not have gotten. And even if somebody else would have gotten it, they still got that break.
So I like that. So like it took me a little while to kind of realize what you were trying to say, but you're essentially trying to say, just so I'm not the only dumb one on this podcast. So the whole point of this podcast, guys, is that somebody's got to balance out Mike's smarts, and that's where I come in. I come in to balance out that level of smartness. But anyways, just so I understand what you're trying to say, you're essentially saying that like even though like you came from a poor family and you've created this sense of wealth for your life and this life that you wanted to have, right?
Well, it's not all there yet. I'm still working.
but that was passed down through the family genes, whether that was, you see
through the white genes. I mean, I had a white.
Yeah. Like they had the chance at education. They had the chance at opportunity, in which then that opportunity then set your life up, even though it might have been poor and on the outside looking in, it wasn't that great. But that's what set you up for who you are today.
Yeah, and also, just to defend you in some way. I mean, you're 26, dude. I was probably 24 with some realization of it. But in a society, by the way, in which we didn't have Facebook and Instagram. I don't even think I had a cell phone. I mean, so you weren't connected at all, right?
Yeah.
And but it still took me 20 years in a radically, unequal justice system to actually look inside myself. And it took some personal tragedy to look inside myself and see those flaws, and understand and I mean, and really have some empathy, and humility, because I mean, these are like the two traits that these people that I'm arguing with and these young men don't have. And I didn't have it. I was an idiot who thought, look at me. Look at how great I am. I mean, I don't know. I mean, and I don't know when you look back. I mean, I try like hell to teach my kids and just how to have conversations. I got a 15-year-old. I'm like, come on. I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm beating my head on a brick, but I'm just trying to show because I can't. Because one thing I learned is I can't control any other human being.
For sure.
The only way that I can help other people is to display empathy, humility, and through what I do, if they have to see by example, they have to look at me, and my child has to look at me and say, I want to handle adversity with grace like my father. I want to, I want to be like him in this way. Not maybe a sports athlete, not maybe a lawyer, but I want to handle life like him. So I have to handle life and display these characteristics so that he and other young men, which, he hangs around with, say, I want to be like that guy. I mean, not just the cool dad, because I'm not. Some of these idiots buy their kids beer and do this. I mean, it's like, look, at my house, you ain't leaving at midnight when you're 15, at my house, there ain't no beer. At my house, you ain't smoking. I mean, that's not cool. My idea of cool is that guy talks to us, understands us, listens to us, and doesn't, browbeat our opinions, but makes us critically think about them.
For sure. And like one thing that also hit me was like in the sense of opportunity, right? So I think it's so great to kind of like look and see like how even like with the BLM movement and some of these movements, it's like they're essentially giving the people that oppress them a second opportunity to go, hey, like I made a mistake. Just look at yourself for a second and look at the mistake you made and you can correct it. So like the second chances that we would never give them, we're getting a second chance. You know what I mean?
We never gave them a second. What are you talking about? We locked them up. We got a penal system that's outrageous. And we can't even look back at history and think, well, these guys are painting things and tearing down statues, and it's just awful. This country came around because we murdered British tax collectors and threw their shit in the harbor, man. I mean, I saw a lady speak, and I can't remember what it was on, but I mean, it was glorious. And she basically said I mean, at the end of this great speech, she said, "You just better be glad that we're looking for equality and not fucking revenge." You
Yeah.
know, and that's the damn truth of the matter. Cause it's hey, when people do stuff that's bad to you, and we all know this, it takes we're not supposed to have resentment. We're not supposed to go back at them, but it's hard to shake. We have to do a lot of soul searching to see that person again in any type of way. And these are just little things like, they didn't let us, or they made us wait in line, or they made us stop for traffic, or whatever the reason, right?
Yeah.
And this has been systemic injustice that has had resounding effects on an entire race of people, which, by the way, I saw another lady talking who was brilliant. And she said, we're all the same race. It's what people don't understand. There's no races. We're the human race. We're different from dogs. We're different from elephants. We're different from, other animals, but we are the human race. And the only thing that really differentiates us, if we want to look at it, is where we decided to live or where our ancestors lived. Because some people lived in Alaska, some people lived in, North America, some people live close to the equator. Close to the equator, browner skin. That's because the sun burns the hell out of you, and so that becomes a trait that these people, that black and brown people have, but it doesn't make their brain any different. The only thing that's made their brain different is systemic racism by white people. I mean, that's what's made their brain, and that's because we didn't educate them. We put their schools in red line districts and didn't give them enough money to have the same things that we have. I mean, it is really, I'll tell you one other thing. High school sports has really opened my eyes, because when I travel to these different schools with my son, and I see the deteriorating conditions of them, and I see these teams without uniforms, but these young men who are still, I mean, without the equipment, without the trainers, and they don't even have coaches who know what they're doing, right? But they dress up, and especially with wrestling, they go out on that mat, and it's heartbreaking. You know what I mean? It is heartbreaking sometimes to watch my own son beat them, even though I want nothing more than the success of my son, because it's like, man, these kids aren't getting a fair shot. And that ain't good for your psyche, by the way. I mean, not having the proper equipment, not having the proper stuff, and going out there in front of a large crowd and getting beat down by somebody who should not be physically capable of beating you down, because they have the equipment, the training, the coaches, the facilities, is not good. I mean, it's not I think it's scarring. I mean, it's just scarring as child abuse in a lot of ways. And I mean, man, I'm telling you, it gives my heart good to see him excel. You know what I mean? Same thing with some of the girls that wrestle. Man, they ain't had the same deal as the guys, and they're coming out wrestling when they're seventh grade or whatever. Man, and when they go out there and beat some dude, I tell you, man, sometimes you might love this kid. He might be over at your house all the time. But man, it kind of gives you a little chuckle, and you're thinking, damn right, girl. You trained your ass off and went out here and beat somebody who's physically more imposing than you, with your brain and with your skill and with your hard work. So, those things, I mean, there's some good in it, but I'm telling you, man, sometimes it's heartbreaking, and I just don't think, I just wish people would look around, and see that, we are all humans, and we all need health care, and we all need education, and we all need houses, and we all need food. I mean, without these basic things, when we don't have these kids don't have a chance. And that's just really sad. And I think that's all, like you were saying, that's all they're really asking for, a chance. And the thing is, they're looking at their tormentors and saying, we understand why you tormented us. Now treat us equal. And the tormentors are not doing the opposite. And that is damn discouraging, man. That's discouraging.
That's what I think is so beautiful about the whole situation. It's almost like, hey, there was some systematic racism affected you too. It raised you with ignorance to think that, like, this whole time we'd all been being, quote unquote, being treated equal, when in reality we haven't. And so you never noticed it You had blinders on because that's how you were raised, right? I'm willing to accept that your flaw. Now, will you just give me the equal chance? Like, we don't want more. They're not arguing for more. They're not saying that you owe me. They're just saying, just treat me like a normal being. Like, I would like to go into court because I made a mistake as a kid and not get the maximum sentence because they think it's going to be best for me to pull me out of my neighborhood because I can't afford to live somewhere else, because they're worried that I might affect, I might just, if I smoke a cigarette, it turns into weed, which turns into cocaine, which turns into heroin. Like, come on, man. Let's be real here,
Well, I can personally say that weed does not turn into heroin or cocaine.
You know what I mean, though? Like,
I got some experience with that, and that's not really how that works.
That's not how that works.
Might turn into Cheetos and ice cream and video games, but yeah.
But you know what I mean, though. It's just like this. They think one thing leads to another because that kid might not have the funding to go to college, and they know that. They look at it. They look at the situation. They're like,
well, backing up. See, I'm proud of you though, man, because see, I told you, I said it's discouraging. Because this gives me hope here, because I said it was discouraging that white people didn't see this, and it discouraged me. And you saw on the other side how you were encouraged by the fact that Black and brown people are actually giving people a second chance. So you saw the good in the situation, and I saw the bad. So you've educated me there, even at your young age, because I mean, it's clearly a better way to look at it, but it still makes me want to beat the shit out of a lot of friends of mine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And don't get me wrong, because it's like once because like I said, I've always been the guy that's been like, oh yeah, I got this friend and that friend, and like we're really close. And like the thing is that those friends that I had were the same way, in the sense of like thinking how I'm thinking, like looking at it going like, oh, this is just the way it is. Like, you'll never understand. And that's one thing I've learned to accept. One thing I've learned to accept is I'll never understand what it's like to be, a person of color, to have a different sexual orientation, to be a female, like I'll never understand what it's like to be oppressed ever. And I can't change that.
You mean working for me hasn't made you feel oppressed at times?
Well, I'm talking to my boss. It's like, saying that is a totally different thing. But what I'm saying is like, yeah, dude, like I'll never actually feel what it's like to be,
in that way. No, I mean, no, we won't. I mean, like I said, I mean, I grew up poor. I've been, where I was, I've been radically, I've done everything. I've like been in a situation where I was doing everything perfect and everything right, and everybody looked up to me. And then the next minute they kicked me right to the curb and took everything away from me that I had earned. But it's not the same. You know what I mean? It's just not that. I mean, it's like, I know about like 1 or 2% of what oppression feels like, I haven't been in a place where we're 50 to 100%, or where people are scared of me or look at me in an odd way or call the police on me for no reason, or, so yeah, you're right. You're never going to know that. But the trick is, I think right now, is to really dig deep and understand it, and just understand how, how all this, just like our white privilege was passed on to us, and some of the stuff we don't know. Like, people don't realize that back in, in the, I think maybe the 50s or 60s, that these big groups came in, got government grants, built houses, and sold them to white people for $15,000. And that's where you had all these neighborhoods swinging, and no black people could come in there. And then, 20 years later, these houses were sold for $150,000, $200,000, and that wealth was passed on to their children. I mean, and that was just a generated wealth gift from government. So even though, you know, like we were talking about, nobody's asking for, they're not asking for, for a give back or any type of reparation. That they honestly, they deserve it. I mean, let's look at it, because this, not just the privilege, but the wealth has been handed down. And I just don't think people understand that story. And that, I'll be honest, I didn't understand that story until this movement, and that's why I try to focus my son on it. I try to talk to him about it, because I don't want him to be, I don't want him to be 45 years old and learning this stuff and waking up and being educated. And I'll tell you another thing too, while I was thinking about this, is the one thing that really is very, that one of the things, there's many things that are very disturbing about it, is the people that just refuse to understand just that fact, how all of this was, and they don't educate their children about this fact. You know what I mean? I would love for all tomorrow to snap my fingers and everybody just be treated equal and everybody get, a fair shot. But it's not going to happen if we don't teach our children, if we don't pass it to this generation.
It's just being okay with never understanding. Like, I think, and what I mean by that is essentially being okay with, because people don't understand. It's not that people don't understand it. I think it's that it's never happened to them. So why? Like, it's like the whole coronavirus thing. It's like, I've never seen anybody with coronavirus. Why do I have to wear a mask? And it's just like, yo, doofus. Like, it's not it's happening. It's a thing. It's like the moment you start to care is when you get affected, right? Maybe, just maybe, if you treated somebody how you would want to be treated, when it starts to happen to you, that same person will treat you with the same respect or give a shit when you're in pain, when you're in trouble. It's like, come on, or when you have coronavirus and the other people aren't wanting to wear the mask, what are you going to say?
Look, I got a whole look. I don't want to go off on a diatribe about the cognitive dissonance in the coronavirus. I think we'll save that for another episode.
Yeah, for sure. No,
we were talking about that earlier. We don't have that much time. But what I think what I was reaching for to say a minute ago is, it seems to me like the people that do suffer this, what is it? They're just not in the real world. They're just refusing to see this stuff. They're also, unbelievably, I've noticed, the same people that don't seem to want their kids to do better than them. And that was a thing back in the day. My grandparents wanted my mother to do better than her. My mother, in the short life that she had with her children, always wanted them to do better. I mean, it used to be a thing to be the first child to go to college in the white community. But in this particular white community that can't seem to grasp the Black Lives Matter movement, they don't want their kids to do better than them. They don't even want to send them to school. They want to educate them themselves, because the liberal schools are going to change their attitudes, and they want them to follow in their footsteps and run their crappy lawn business or whatever the stupid business that they're doing. That's absurd. I don't want my kid to suffer a day without $1 because of the career that he chose my career. I want him to be like in charge of something big. I want him to have a massive house and spread goodness and wealth to everyone. I don't want him to be like me, just some little lawyer, doing my thing, trying to help people help one person at a time. I want him to be some big, have big aspirations and be smarter earlier. I want him to look at me when we're old and us sit around and him say, man, you sure were stupid for a long time, and I'll be like, yeah, I was, cause I got empathy in you. I got humility. Hey, yeah, I was dumb for a long time. You could just say, thank you for making you educated. Of course, I don't expect that from my kids, because you know what expectations do, man. They just make you disappointed, right?
For sure.
You don't want to get to that, but it seems like that's the group that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
It's like 30% of the country. And that's scary.
Yeah.
It's an indictment on our education system as a whole, because we just haven't done a funny thing. Every time I say indictment on the education system, I remember going to Europe like years ago with a friend of mine who's not enlightened at all, let me say. But we were on a bus in where I want to say we were in, where were we? So I can't even remember, man. It was north of France, all right, and we were going to take a tour. It was Norway, or I think it might have been Norway or someplace like that. And we were getting on this bus. We're going to take a tour, right? And the kid stands up in the front, and this kid's like 18, and he says, "How many people speak English?" People raise their hand. How many people speak German? How many speak French? How many Italian? Any other languages? Oh, back in the back. Okay, all right. And this dude, through this whole tour, tells us about everything in every single language that was on that bus. There were 6 different languages this kid spoke. And I don't know why it didn't dawn on me how stupid Americans are at this point, but I was like, holy crap. I mean, I talked to him after, I was like, you can speak 6 languages, and he's like, yeah, man, we all can speak. Most people speak 3 or 4. And I'm thinking, yeah, shit. We don't. These morons in America don't speak English. I mean, properly. So it's just a real sad indictment on that. And that, I think, is what has contributed to this cognitive dissonance, this political environment, this ridiculous, oppression of our black and brown brothers and women. Because I mean, good Lord, we oppress women, something awful, and I'll be honest, I wasn't the best. I mean, I had my views, and I've always been pretty liberal. But I think that I've got a very young paralegal who speaks Spanish in my office, and she has enlightened me to my grammatical errors in the way in speaking with women. And it's and like, I mean, hey, she's right. I know that. So I'm learning, man. I'm learning. I'm 45, 46 years old. I'm learning that my sweetie newisms are not appreciated. So as much as I didn't mean it in a harmful intent, you can never stop learning, right? Yeah. But that, like I said, that whole indictment is pretty sad. I mean, it really shows how bad it really is,
But hey, I think that's a good way for us to kind of close out. That's who we are as people, for the most part. I mean, we could go on for days about our beliefs, our views, and our thoughts, but we'll save that for the next episode. Mike, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Hey, listen, we are going to talk about what I do in other episodes. Yeah. So, because I do want to give you guys some tips about what to do when you are in, car wrecks or truck wrecks and whatnot. This time I think John wanted to introduce us and give us an idea, give you some flavor about what we'll be talking about. But I do want to let people know that, we will try to provide information in that vein, because, I see people get taken advantage of all the time by insurance companies. And, and that's just that's just a bigger group of people taking advantage of another group of people that, black and brown, white, everybody. That's the patriarchal, oligarchical society taking advantage of, just society in general. So we will talk about that.
For sure.
I just wanted to bust in.
This week, we wanted to set the stage of who we are and what kind of people we are. Because that, honestly, I think that's so underrated, where, people just go to like, dude, I found out that I was about to get a mortgage with some, people that are, the people that post on Facebook, and you're just like, you meet these people and you're like, oh, this person's going to hook me up with a mortgage, will be good. And then you start seeing their views, and it's like, I never want to work with that person. Like, we don't vibe at all. So hopefully you guys appreciate and enjoy this episode. But yeah, like he said, on the next episodes, we will definitely dive in and chat a little bit about, hey, what kind of insurance do you need? Hey, what happens when you get into this situation? Or, hey, what's going on in the day-to-day?
Hey, and we might even talk about why there's like 10,000 Confederate statues all over the place. I mean, which is absurd.
Man, so you guys already know.
You're either going to want to be our Facebook friends when this is over, Or you'll delete us like we would delete you.
Probably, yeah. And it's probably for the best, honestly. Hey, I'm not out here to change anybody's opinions. You're just here to listen to mine. So thanks. Anyways, we're out. Thanks.
Hey, thanks, John.